In the harsh Colorado territory of 1878, a desperate rancher places an ad for a mail-order bride not just for himself but for his blind 8-year-old daughter who needs a mother's touch. But when the woman who steps off the train carries secrets that could heal his child's darkness and ignite his own heart, their lives take an unexpected turn that will challenge everything they thought they knew about love, family, and second chances. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow this incredible journey of healing, love, and the miracles that happen when two broken souls find each other in the untamed West. Papa, I Can See You. When mail-order bride's secret healing gift changed everything. The morning mist clung to Eagle Valley like a shroud, and Nathaniel Blackwood stood at his kitchen window, watching his 8-year-old daughter Emma navigate the familiar path to the chicken coop with careful, measured steps. Her small hands traced the wooden fence rail he'd built specifically for her guidance, and his heart clenched with the familiar mixture of love and helplessness that had become his constant companion these past 2 years. "Easy, Emma," he called softly through the open window. "The rooster's in a mood today." Her face turned toward his voice, and she smiled that radiant smile that could light up the darkest Colorado winter. "I know, Papa. I can hear him strutting around like he owns the whole territory." Nate's weathered hands gripped the windowsill. If only she could see that rooster's ridiculous display of feathers. If only she could see anything at all. The accident replayed in his mind for the 1,000th time. 2 years ago, when the mining company had been blasting near their property line, Emma's horse had spooked at the explosive sound. She'd been thrown, striking her head on a boulder with a sickening crack that still haunted his dreams. The local doctor had done what he could, but the damage to her optic nerves seemed permanent. "Mr. Blackwood," Nate turned to find his ranch foreman, Tommy Rodriguez, standing in the doorway with his hat in his hands and worry creasing his weathered features. "What is it, Tommy?" "It's about the advertisement, sir. The one you placed in the Boston papers." Tommy shifted uncomfortably. "Got a telegram from the matrimonial agency. Says a lady's accepted your proposal. She'll be on the afternoon train tomorrow." Nate felt his stomach drop. He'd placed that advertisement 3 weeks ago in a moment of desperation after watching Emma struggle to help with the household chores and realizing she needed more than he could give her. The ad had been carefully worded. "Widowed rancher seeks capable woman to manage household and assist with special needs child. Must be patient, kind, and skilled in domestic arts." He hadn't mentioned that the special needs involved blindness. He hadn't mentioned that he wasn't looking for a wife so much as a caretaker, and he certainly hadn't mentioned that his heart was still buried with Lily Emma's mother, who died bringing their daughter into the world. "Did they say anything about her qualifications?" Nate asked. "Just that she's experienced with children and comes highly recommended." Tommy paused. "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, are you sure about this? Emma's been doing better lately and—" "She walked into the well yesterday, Tommy." Nate's voice was sharper than he intended. "If I hadn't heard the splash, she could have drowned. She needs someone who understands her condition, someone who can teach her things I don't know how to teach." Tommy nodded reluctantly. "Yes, sir. I'll prepare the guest room." As Tommy left, Nate returned his gaze to Emma, who was now carefully collecting eggs with the systematic precision she'd developed since losing her sight. Every movement was deliberate, every step calculated. She'd adapted remarkably well, but adaptation wasn't the same as living. The rest of the day passed in a blur of nervous energy. Nate found himself second-guessing every aspect of his hastily made decision. What if this woman took one look at Emma's condition and decided it was more than she'd bargained for? What if she was one of those people who saw blindness as a punishment or a curse? What if she tried to change Emma instead of understanding her? That evening, as Nate helped Emma prepare for bed, she sensed his distraction. "Papa, you're worried about something," she said. Her unseeing eyes turned toward his face with that uncanny accuracy she'd developed. "I can tell by the way you're breathing." Nate marveled not for the first time at how her other senses had sharpened to compensate for her lost sight. She could identify people by their footsteps, predict weather changes, by subtle shifts in air pressure, and read emotions and voices with startling precision. "There's going to be a visitor tomorrow," he said carefully. "A lady who might stay with us for a while." Emma's face lit up with curiosity. "A lady like Mrs. Rodriguez?" "Not exactly." Nate struggled with how to explain the arrangement to a child. She's someone who might help around the house, help take care of you when I'm working the far pastures. Do I need taking care of? Emma asked, and there was something in her voice that made Nate's chest tighten. No, sweetheart, you're the strongest, smartest girl in all of Colorado, but everyone needs help, sometimes even papas. Emma considered this with the seriousness that had characterized her personality since the accident. Will she like me, do you think? How could she not like you? Nate pulled her into his arms, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. You're perfect just as you are. But even as he said the words, Nate wondered if this mysterious woman from Boston would see Emma the way he did as a bright, capable child who happened to be blind, or if she would see only the limitation. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with the kind of crystalline air that made the Rocky Mountains look close enough to touch. Nate had barely slept, and his hands shook slightly as he shaved. Tommy had offered to drive Emma to her friend Sarah's house for the afternoon, but Emma had insisted on coming to the train station. I want to meet her too, Papa, she'd said with that stubborn tilt to her chin that reminded him so much of Lily. If she's going to live in our house, I should know what she sounds like. Now as they waited on the platform of the small Silverbrook station, Nate found himself studying every detail of his daughter's appearance. Her dark hair was neatly braided, her simple blue dress clean and pressed. She stood with perfect posture, her hand resting lightly on his arm for guidance, and anyone who didn't know her condition might not immediately realize she couldn't see. The train's whistle echoed through the valley, and Nate felt his pulse quicken. In a few minutes, his life would change irrevocably. For better or worse, he was about to welcome a stranger into his home, into Emma's carefully ordered world. The locomotive pulled into the station with a great hissing of steam and grinding of brakes. Passengers began to disembark: a traveling salesman with his sample cases, two miners heading back to work, an elderly woman visiting family. Then she appeared. Catherine Brennan was not what Nate had expected. She was tall, nearly as tall as he was, with auburn hair that caught the afternoon light and intelligent green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore a practical traveling dress of deep brown wool, and she carried herself with a confidence that spoke of experience and capability. But it was what she did next that caught Nate completely off guard. As Kate, for he somehow knew instinctively that she would prefer the shorter name, stepped onto the platform, her gaze immediately found Emma. And instead of the awkward uncertainty Nate had braced himself for, Kate's face broke into a gentle smile. She approached them directly, but when she reached Emma, she did something remarkable. She spoke to Emma first. You must be Emma, Kate said, and her voice was warm honey over gravel with just a trace of Boston refinement. I'm Catherine, but I hope you'll call me Kate. I've heard wonderful things about you. Emma turned her face toward the voice, and Nate saw something in his daughter's expression that he hadn't seen in months: genuine curiosity mixed with hope. Papa says you might stay with us, Emma said carefully. Are you going to try to fix my eyes? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Nate held his breath, waiting for Kate's response. Most people either made empty promises about miraculous cures or offered awkward reassurances that weren't needed. Kate did neither. I'm not here to fix anything, Emma, she said simply. I'm here to learn about you and your papa and to help however I can. But first, I'd like to ask you something. What? Would you mind if I knelt down? I'd prefer to be at your height when we talk. Emma nodded, and Kate gracefully lowered herself until they were eye level. Nate watched fascinated as Kate continued the conversation without any of the patronizing tone people often use with children, especially children with disabilities. I've never been to Colorado before, Kate said. Would you be willing to tell me about it? About your home? And Emma, who had been shy and withdrawn around strangers since her accident, began to talk. She told Kate about the ranch, about the horses, and the way the wind sounded different in summer and winter. She described the texture of snow and the smell of pine trees, painting a picture of their world through senses that most people took for granted. Kate listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions and making observations that showed she truly understood what Emma was telling her. And slowly, Nate felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Mr. Blackwood. Kate rose and extended her hand to him. I'm Catherine Brennan. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct. Up close, Nate could see lines around her eyes that spoke of experience and something in her bearing that suggested she'd seen more of the world than most women her age. "Just Nate," he said, "and I thank you for coming so far." "It's an adventure," Kate replied, and there was something in her smile that made him believe she meant it. As they loaded her modest luggage into the wagon, Nate found himself stealing glances at this unexpected woman. She moved with economy and purpose, and when she helped Emma up onto the wagon seat, her touch was gentle but confident. The ride back to the ranch should have been awkward, but Kate seemed to understand the art of comfortable conversation. She asked about the land, the climate, the challenges of ranching in Colorado. She listened to Emma's chatter about her favorite hiding spots and the personalities of various farm animals. And she observed everything with those intelligent, green eyes. "It's beautiful," she said as they crested the hill that revealed the full sweep of Silverbrook Ranch. The house sat in a natural amphitheater of rolling meadows with the creek that gave the ranch its name running silver through the grass. Behind it, the Rockies rose like a wall of granite and snow against the endless blue sky. "Papa built our house right where the prettiest flowers grow," Emma said proudly. "In spring, there are so many colors that even I remember them." Kate's eyes met Nate's over Emma's head, and he saw something there, not pity but understanding. This woman grasped that Emma's memories of sight were precious, not painful. "I'd love to hear about those flowers," Kate said. "Maybe you could show me where they grow." As they pulled up to the house, Nate felt a cautious optimism beginning to bloom in his chest. Maybe this arrangement would work after all. Maybe this capable woman from Boston could give Emma something he couldn't not cite, but a different way of seeing the world. But as Kate stepped down from the wagon, her gaze scanning the house and outbuildings with what seemed like professional assessment, Nate wondered what had really brought her here. Women with her obvious education and bearing had options. Why would she choose to come to an isolated ranch to care for a blind child and a grieving widower that first evening? As Kate helped Emma prepare for bed, Nate listened from the kitchen to the sound of their voices. Emma's bright chatter and Kate's warm responses. For the first time in 2 years, his house felt alive. But in the depths of night, when the mountain silence pressed against the windows and the coyotes called from the distant hills, Nate found himself wondering what secrets lay behind Catherine Brennan's steady green eyes. Because if there was one thing he'd learned in his years as a soldier and a rancher, it was that everyone who came to the frontier was running from something. The question was, what was Kate running from, and would it follow her here? 3 weeks had passed since Kate's arrival at Silverbrook Ranch, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Not in Emma's sight that remained unchanged, but in the very soul of the household. Kate had established routines that gave Emma new independence. She created a tactile map of the house using different textured fabrics, taught Emma to identify spices by scent alone, and most remarkably had begun teaching her a system of raised dots that could represent letters and words. "It's called Braille," Kate explained to Nate one evening as they watched Emma practice reading by candlelight. "A Frenchman invented it. I learned it from a colleague who'd studied in Paris." Nate studied Kate's profile in the flickering light. "Where exactly did you work before coming here?" For just a moment, Kate's hands stilled on the mending in her lap. "Various places, hospitals, private homes. The war left many people in need of care." It was always like this with Kate, answers that satisfied without really answering. Nate had learned not to push, but his curiosity grew stronger each day. This woman knew too much, was too skilled, too educated for a simple domestic position. "Papa, listen," Emma called from her spot at the kitchen table, her small fingers moving across the dots Kate had punched into thick paper. "This says horse." The joy in his daughter's voice made Nate's chest swell. For the first time since her accident, Emma was learning again, growing again. And it was all because of Kate. That night after Emma had gone to bed, Nate found Kate on the front porch gazing up at the star-filled Colorado sky. The autumn air was crisp, hinting at the harsh winter to come. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her. "I've always been a light sleeper." Kate's voice was soft in the darkness. "In my profession, you learn to wake at the slightest sound." "Your profession?" Kate turned to look at him, and in the moonlight he could see conflict in her expression. "I was a nurse, Nate, during the before and after." "Which is why you're so good with Emma." "Yes," Kate's hands twisted in her lap. "I've cared for many children with challenging conditions." There was something in her tone that made Nate lean forward. "Kate, what brought you here, really?" brought you here?" Before she could answer, the sound of hoofbeats echoed across the valley. Multiple riders moving fast in the darkness. Nate was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to the rifle he kept by the door. "Get inside," he told Kate, but she was already moving not toward the house, but toward the barn. "I'll check on the horses," she called over her shoulder, and Nate was struck by her immediate understanding of the situation. This wasn't a woman who panicked. The riders crested the hill, 5 men silhouetted against the starlit sky. As they approached, Nate recognized the lead horse, a massive black stallion that belonged to Colonel Marcus Brennan, one of the most powerful men in Colorado Territory. Nate's blood ran cold. Brennan was known for his ruthless business practices and his habit of acquiring land through means both legal and questionable. What was he doing at Silverbrook Ranch at midnight, Blackwood? Brennan's voice boomed across the yard as the riders pulled up. "We need to talk." Nate stepped into the circle of light cast by the porch lantern rifle held ready, but not quite aimed. "Colonel, bit late for a social call." Brennan dismounted and Nate could see the man's face clearly, now hard-weathered with cold blue eyes that missed nothing. He was followed by 4 men who had the look of hired guns about them. "I'll be direct, Blackwood. I want to buy your ranch. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price." Brennan stepped closer and Nate caught the scent of whiskey on his breath. "I'm prepared to be generous." "I said no." Brennan's expression darkened. "You might want to reconsider. There are valuable mineral deposits on this land, silver, possibly gold, the kind of wealth that could set a man up for life." "My life is already set up, thanks." "Is it?" Brennan's gaze flicked toward the house. "Raising a handicapped child alone, struggling to make ends meet. That's no life for a man like you." Heat flared in Nate's chest at the casual dismissal of Emma. "You need to leave now." "I'm trying to help you, Blackwood. There are forces at work here bigger than your little ranch. The railroad's coming through this valley whether you like it or not. Men who cooperate prosper. Men who don't." Brennan shrugged. "Well, accidents happen in mining country." The threat was clear, and Nate raised his rifle slightly. "Get off my land." Brennan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You have a week to consider my offer. After that, things might become complicated." As the riders wheeled their horses to leave, Brennan paused. "Oh, and Blackwood, you might want to ask your new housekeeper about her credentials. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones with the most to hide." With that cryptic warning, the riders galloped away, leaving Nate standing alone in the sudden silence, his mind racing. What had Brennan meant about Kate's credentials? He turned to find Kate emerging from the barn, her face pale in the moonlight. "Who was that?" she asked, but something in her voice suggested she already knew. "Colonel Marcus Brennan, local, businessman." Nate studied her expression carefully. "Kate, is there something you need to tell me?" For a long moment, Kate stood frozen, her green eyes wide with what looked like fear. Then slowly she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "There is." Check. They sat at the kitchen table while Kate made coffee with hands that trembled slightly. Nate waited, sensing that whatever she was about to reveal would change everything between them. "Colonel Brennan is my father," Kate said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit Nate like a physical blow. "Your father, biological father. He abandoned my mother and me when I was 3 years old." Kate's hands clenched around her coffee cup. "I haven't seen him in 25 years. But your name?" "Brennan was my mother's maiden name. She took it back after he left." Kate looked up at Nate, and he could see tears threatening in her eyes. "She never spoke of him, never told me his name until she was dying 5 years ago." Nate felt his world tilting. So coming here was no coincidence. Kate's voice was stronger now, filled with a bitter resolve. "I've been tracking him for years, trying to understand why he left, what kind of man abandons his family. When I learned he was in Colorado, I arranged to be placed with a family in his territory." "You used us." The words came out harsher than Nate intended, but the betrayal cut deep. "No." Kate stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "It started that way, I admit. But Nate, you have to believe me. Whatever brought me here, what I feel for you and Emma is real." Nate wanted to believe her, but the deception stung. "What exactly did you plan to do? Confront him? Demand explanations?" "I don't know." Kate paced to the window, her silhouette tense against the darkness. I thought I'd know when I saw him, but tonight, she shuddered. Tonight I saw what kind of man he really is. He threatened us, Nate said quietly. Threatened Emma. Kate whirled around, her eyes blazing. He what? Made it clear that refusing his offer to buy the ranch would have consequences. Nate studied Kate's face, seeing genuine shock and anger there. Kate, what do you know about his business practices? Only rumors, stories about families forced off their land, mysterious accidents at competing mines. Kate sank back into her chair. I wanted to believe they weren't true. A new thought struck Nate, cold and sharp. Did he know you were here? Is that why he came tonight? I don't think so. He didn't recognize me. I look more like my mother than him. Kate's voice was thoughtful now. But if he finds out, he'll use you against us, Nate finished. The implications were staggering. Kate, you have to leave, tonight. No. The word was firm, absolute. I won't abandon Emma, or you. This isn't about abandonment, isn't it? Kate leaned forward, her green eyes intense. Nate, in 3 weeks, Emma has learned more than in the 2 years since her accident. She's reading, she's confident, she's happy. Would you really take that away from her? Nate felt torn between his protective instincts and his growing feelings for this complicated woman. I won't risk her safety. Then we protect her. Together. Kate reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. I know I should have told you the truth from the beginning, but I'm telling you now, and I'm asking you to trust me. Before Nate could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. Papa Kate, why are you awake? Emma stood in the doorway in her white nightgown, her dark hair tousled from sleep. She must have been awakened by the sound of voices. Just talking, sweetheart, Nate said, his voice carefully calm. Go back to bed. But Emma, with that uncanny perception that had developed since losing her sight, sensed the tension in the room. Something's wrong, I can feel it. Kate rose and went to Emma, kneeling down to the girl's level as she always did. Everything's fine, Emma. Your papa and I were just discussing some adult matters. Are you going away? Emma's voice was small, frightened. People always go away. The question hung in the air like an accusation. Nate saw Kate's face crumple with emotion as she pulled Emma into her arms. I'm not going anywhere, Kate whispered fiercely. I promise you, Emma, I'm not going anywhere. Over Emma's head, Kate's eyes met Nate's, and he saw a determination there that matched his own fierce protectiveness. Whatever Kate's original motives had been, her love for Emma was genuine, and perhaps Nate dared to hope her feelings for him were real as well. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Nate was working in the barn when Tommy Rodriguez came running from the house. Nate, you need to come quick. There's an Indian at the door, and Miss Kate's talking to him like they're old friends. Nate dropped his tools and hurried to the house, where he found Kate standing on the porch in animated conversation with Chief Mountain Wolf of the local Ute tribe. The chief was a man of perhaps 60, with intelligent, dark eyes and silver-streaked braids. He wore a mixture of traditional and white man's clothing, and his bearing was that of a natural leader. What surprised Nate was that the conversation was taking place in what sounded like fluent Ute. Chief Mountain Wolf, Nate said, approaching cautiously. The relationship between the ranch and the local tribe was cordial but careful. The chief turned to him with a slight smile. Blackwood, your woman speaks our tongue well. Nate glanced at Kate, adding this to the growing list of unexpected talents she possessed. Kate, I learned from a colleague who worked with the reservation doctors, Kate explained, but there was something evasive in her manner. Chief Mountain Wolf has some interesting information about Colonel Brennan. The chief's expression grew serious. The bluecoat colonel speaks with forked tongue. He promises our people jobs in his mines, then works them until they die. He poisons our water with his machinery, kills our hunting grounds. Why are you telling us this? Nate asked. Because the colonel seeks to drive you from this land as he has driven others. But this land, the chief gestured toward the valley spread below them. This land is sacred to my people. If it falls to the colonel, more than your home will be lost. Kate and the chief exchanged a look that suggested this wasn't their first conversation. Chief Mountain Wolf, tell Nate what you told me about the colonel's methods. He uses fear, accidents that are not accidents, fires that start in the night, men who disappear when they refuse to sell. The chief's voice was grave. But he is not as powerful as he believes. He has enemies among his own people, those who grow tired of his greed. A plan was beginning to form in Nate's mind. Chief, would your people be willing to help us if we could find evidence of Brennan's crimes? Audience, the chief smiled grimly. We have evidence, we have witnesses. What we need is someone the white man's law will believe. Kate stepped forward. What if we could get him to confess, to admit his crimes where others could hear? Both men looked at her with surprise. How? Nate asked. By giving him what he wants. Kate said, her green eyes bright with determination, or making him think he's getting it. Over the next 2 days, they formulated a plan that was dangerous, complicated, and entirely dependent on Kate's ability to deceive her own father. The idea was for Kate to reveal her identity to Brennan and offer to help him acquire the ranch in exchange for information about why he'd abandoned her family. It's too risky, Nate argued for the dozenth time as they discussed the plan. If he suspects you're working against him, he won't, Kate interrupted. He'll see what he wants to see, a bitter daughter seeking revenge against the man who wouldn't sell to her father. Emma, who had been quietly working on her Braille lessons, looked up from her table. I don't like this plan. It feels wrong. Even at 8 years old, Emma's intuition was often startlingly accurate. But Kate knelt beside her chair, taking the girl's hands in hers. Sometimes, Emma, we have to do difficult things to protect the people we love. But I promise you I will come back. Do you trust me? Emma considered this with her characteristic seriousness. Yes, but be careful, Kate. Some people are more dangerous than they seem. That evening, as Kate prepared for her confrontation with Brennan, Nate found himself watching her with new eyes. This woman who had seemed like a gentle caregiver was revealing herself to be something far more complex, part healer, part warrior with depths he was only beginning to fathom. Kate, he said as she prepared to leave, whatever happens, I want you to know, these past weeks, having you here, it's changed everything for us. She turned to him, and for a moment her composed mask slipped, revealing vulnerability beneath. Nate, there's something else I need to tell you about why I really came here. But before she could continue, the sound of approaching horses interrupted them. Through the window, they could see torches moving down the valley road. He's coming here, Kate whispered, her face pale. Something's wrong. This wasn't the plan. Nate grabbed his rifle, his mind racing. If Brennan was coming to the ranch in force, it meant he'd discovered Kate's true identity, which meant their careful plan had just become a fight for survival. Emma, Nate called, come here quickly. But as Emma felt her way toward them, the front door exploded open and Colonel Marcus Brennan strode into their home with 4 armed men behind him. Well, Brennan said, his cold blue eyes fixed on Kate. Catherine Marie Brennan, my dear long-lost daughter. The way he said it with such venom, such calculated cruelty, made Nate's blood run cold. This was no reunion. This was a trap. Hello, Father, Kate said, and her voice was steady despite the danger. It's been a long time. 25 years, Brennan agreed. Not nearly long enough. His gaze shifted to Emma, who stood frozen in the center of the room, and his smile turned predatory. And this must be the famous blind child. How? Oh, it's touching. The threat in his voice was unmistakable, and Nate stepped protectively in front of Emma. Leave her out of this. Oh, but she's very much a part of this, Brennan said. You see, Blackwood, I know all about my daughter's sentimental attachment to broken things. She always was drawn to lost causes. Kate stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Your compliance. Brennan's voice was silk over steel. You're going to help me acquire this ranch daughter, dear. And that touching little family of yours is going to disappear into the mountains permanently. The casual way he spoke of murder made Nate's finger tighten on his rifle trigger pouch. But with 4 guns trained on them and Emma in the line of fire, he was trapped. There is, however, an alternative, Brennan continued. You come with me now, Kate, willingly, and I'll allow Blackwood and his child to live. They can even keep their precious ranch. No, Emma said suddenly, her young voice clear and strong in the tense silence. Kate doesn't go anywhere. Brennan laughed to sound like breaking glass. The blind child has opinions. How amusing. And then Emma did something that shocked everyone in the room. She looked directly at Brennan with perfect accuracy, her unseeing eyes fixed on his face, as if she could see him clearly. I know who you are, she said, her voice unnaturally calm. You're the bad man from Kate's dreams. She cries about you sometimes when she thinks no one can hear. Brennan's laughter died. Impossible. She can't see. I don't need to see you, Emma replied. I can smell the sickness on you. The same sickness that was on the man who hurt the horses. The same sickness that's in our well water now. A chill ran down Nate's spine. Emma was describing things she couldn't possibly know unless her other senses had developed beyond anything he'd imagined. Kate was staring at Emma with wonder and growing understanding. Emma, what else can you smell? Fear, Emma said simply. From the men with guns. They don't want to be here. And sadness from you, and anger from Papa. She paused, tilting her head as if listening to something only she could hear. And horses. Many horses coming fast. Brennan frowned, stepping toward the window. What horses? The answer came in the form of war whoops echoing across the valley, followed by the thunder of hoofbeats. Chief Mountain Wolf and his warriors were arriving right on schedule, but several hours early. In the confusion that followed as Brennan's men scrambled to defensive positions and began firing at the approaching riders, Kate made her move. Emma, get down, she shouted, tackling the girl to the floor just as bullets began shattering the windows. Nate used the distraction to dive for better cover, returning fire at Brennan's men. But in the chaos, he lost sight of Kate and Emma. The battle was brief but intense. Chief Mountain Wolf's warriors had the advantage of darkness and terrain, and Brennan's men were caught off guard. Within minutes, 3 of the hired guns were down and the 4th had fled. But when the gunfire ended and the smoke cleared, Nate discovered something that made his blood freeze. Brennan was gone, and he'd taken Kate with him. Papa, we have to find her. Emma said, her small hand gripping Nate's arm with surprising strength. He's going to hurt her. Nate was already moving, checking his weapons and gathering supplies. Chief Mountain Wolf entered the house, his weathered face grim. The colonel took her to Devil's Canyon, the chief reported. My scouts followed them. He has maybe 10 men with him now. Devil's Canyon was a natural fortress, a narrow gorge with only one way in or out, surrounded by sheer cliff walls. If Brennan had chosen it as his stronghold, he was either very confident or very desperate. It's a trap, Nate said. He's using Kate as bait. Of course it's a trap, Emma said matter-of-factly. But we're going anyway, aren't we? Nate looked down at his daughter, this remarkable child, who continued to astound him with her courage and insight. Emma, you can't come. It's too dangerous. Papa, Emma's voice carried a patience that seemed far beyond her 8 years. Kate taught me something important. She said that sometimes the things that make us different are actually the things that make us strong. Chief Mountain Wolf nodded slowly. The child speaks wisdom. In Devil's Canyon, sight can be a limitation. Sound, smell, the feel of the wind, these things will tell us more than eyes. Nate wanted to argue to protect Emma from the violence that was surely coming. But as he looked at his daughter's determined face, he realized that protecting her might mean trusting her strength rather than sheltering her from it. All right, he said finally, but you stay close and you do exactly what I say. Emma's smile was radiant. We're going to save her, Papa. I can feel it. As they prepared to leave, Nate found himself thinking about the woman they were riding to rescue. In the space of a few weeks, Kate had become the center of their small world. She'd brought light to Emma's darkness, purpose to Nate's grief, and love to a house that had forgotten how to hope. The journey to Devil's Canyon took them through treacherous mountain terrain, but Chief Mountain Wolf knew paths that existed nowhere on any white man's map. They rode in silence, conserving their strength and their horses for what lay ahead. As they climbed higher, Emma began to display the heightened senses that had so unsettled Brennan. She could detect changes in the wind that warned of rock slides, identify the scent of water sources that weren't visible, and even sense the presence of other humans through subtle changes in the environment. There, she whispered as they crested a ridge. Kate is down there. She's scared, but she's not hurt. Nate peered down into the canyon where the flicker of campfires revealed Brennan's position. How can you tell? Her breathing. I can hear it echo off the canyon walls. Emma's explanation was matter-of-fact, as if such perception was perfectly normal. She's trying to stay calm, but her heart is beating fast. Chief Mountain Wolf gave Nate a meaningful look. Your daughter has the gift. Some are born with eyes that see the spirit world. As they planned their approach, Nate began to understand that Emma's blindness might indeed be their greatest advantage. She could navigate by sound and touch, detect enemies by scent and vibration, and move through darkness with a confidence that would take their opponents by surprise. Down in Devil's Canyon, Kate sat with her hands bound, watching her father pace before the fire like a caged predator. She'd remained calm during the forced ride, knowing that Nate would come for her. The question was whether she could stay alive long enough for rescue to arrive. You know, Brennan said conversationally, I always wondered what became of you and your mother, whether you'd inherited her weakness or my strength. Mother wasn't weak, Kate replied quietly. She was kind. There's a difference. Kindness is weakness in this world, daughter. It gets you nothing but pain. Brennan stopped pacing and fixed her with his cold stare. Look at you now. Your kindness toward that crippled child has put you exactly where I want you. Emma isn't crippled. She's gifted. Brennan laughed harshly. Gifted? She's blind, Kate. Useless. A burden her father would be better off without. Rage flared in Kate's chest. You don't know anything about her, about what she can do. Oh, I know plenty. I know she's the lever I'll use to ensure your cooperation. Because you've grown attached to broken things just like your mother did. Brennan's smile was cruel. She grew attached to me after all. The casual cruelty of it took Kate's breath away. Why did you leave us? Because I had bigger plans than playing house with a weak woman and her needy child. Brennan shrugged. I came west to build an empire, not to be tied down by domestic obligations. We weren't obligations. We were your family. Family is a luxury I couldn't afford. Brennan turned back to the fire. But now, ironically, family has become useful. You're going to help me acquire the Blackwood Ranch and several others. Your reputation as a healer will lend credibility to my claims that the previous owners died of natural causes. Kate stared at him in horror. You're planning to murder innocent people. I'm planning to acquire valuable land. If people die in the process, that's unfortunate, but necessary. The conversation was interrupted by one of Brennan's sentries rushing into the camp. Colonel, we've got riders approaching from the north. Brennan's hand moved to his pistol. How many? Hard to tell in the darkness. Maybe 6 or 7. Blackwood, Brennan said with satisfaction. Right on schedule. He turned to Kate with a predatory smile. Time to see how much your cowboy values your life. Nate, Emma, and Chief Mountain Wolf approached the canyon with the stealth of hunting wolves. The Ute warriors had spread out to cover multiple approaches while Nate and Emma took the most direct route. Remember, Nate whispered to his daughter, you're our secret weapon, but stay behind me until I give the signal. Emma nodded her small hand, finding his with unerring accuracy. Papa, there's something else. About Kate. What about her? She's not just scared, she's singing inside her head the lullaby she taught me. Emma's voice was thoughtful. I think she's trying to stay brave. The image of Kate bound and threatened, but still finding courage in a child's lullaby, made Nate's chest tighten with emotion. This woman had become precious to him in ways he was only beginning to understand. They reached the canyon rim just as Brennan's voice echoed up from below. Blackwood, I know you're up there. Come down and let's discuss terms. Nate stepped onto this edge where he could be seen keeping Emma behind him. Let Kate go, Brennan. This is between you and me. Oh, but it's so much more than that now. Brennan's voice was jovial, as if they were discussing the weather. You see, I've discovered something fascinating about my dear daughter. She has quite the reputation back east. Seems she's wanted for questioning in connection with several deaths at a military hospital. Kate's voice rose from the canyon floor, clear and strong. That's a lie, Nate. Don't believe him. Is it? Brennan called back. Tell him about the soldiers who died under your care, Kate. Tell him about the medicine that went missing. Tell him about the real reason you came west. Nate felt Emma's hand tighten on his arm. Even at 8 years old, she could sense the pain in Kate's voice when she replied. I tried to save them, Kate shouted, and her voice broke. The hospital was corrupt. They were letting soldiers die rather than spend money on proper medicine. I took supplies to treat them myself. Some of them died anyway, and they blame me. The raw anguish in her voice told Nate everything he needed to know. Kate hadn't been running from crime. She'd been running from a broken system that had punished her for trying to save lives. Doesn't matter now, Brennan called up. What matters is that I have her and you want her back. So here's my offer sign over your ranch and I'll let both of you live. And if I refuse, then I'll kill her in front of you and then I'll kill you. Either way, I get the ranch. It was a classic Brennan maneuver, all the leverage, no room for negotiation. But Nate had learned a few things about strategy during his military service, and he had an advantage Brennan couldn't imagine. All right, Nate called down. I'm coming down to talk. Emma tugged on his sleeve. Papa, I'm coming with you. Emma, no. Papa. Her voice was calm, certain. Kate needs to hear my voice, to know she's not alone. Something in his daughter's tone made Nate look at her more closely. In the moonlight, Emma's face held an expression of determined peace that reminded him startlingly of her mother. All right, he said finally, but stay close. They made their way down the narrow path into the canyon, Emma's hand light on Nate's arm as she navigated the treacherous terrain with confidence that amazed him. At the bottom, they found themselves facing Brennan and his remaining men across the dancing flames of the campfire. Kate sat bound nearby, her green eyes wide with alarm when she saw Emma. You brought the child, Brennan asked with amusement. How touching. A family reunion. Let Kate go, Nate said simply. Take me instead. Oh, I'm taking you both. But first, Brennan drew his pistol and pointed it at Emma. I want to see just how much this crippled child means to you. The word crippled hung in the air like a curse, and Nate felt murderous rage building in his chest. But before he could move, Emma stepped forward. You're wrong about me, she said quietly to Brennan. I'm not crippled. I'm different. Brennan laughed. Different child you can't even see. No, Emma agreed, but I can hear your heart beating fast because you're afraid. I can smell the sickness in your soul. And I can feel the ground shaking because Chief Mountain Wolf's warriors are all around us. Brennan's laughter died as he realized what Emma had said was true. The ground was vibrating with the movement of many horses, and suddenly war cries echoed from the canyon walls as Ute warriors appeared on the rim above. In the confusion that followed, Emma did something that would be talked about around Ute campfires for generations to come. She walked directly to Kate, navigating around the fire and past startled gunmen with absolute confidence. Her small hands found the ropes binding Kate's wrists and began working at the knots with practiced efficiency. How are you doing that? Kate whispered. You taught me, Emma replied calmly. You taught me that my hands could see what my eyes couldn't. As Kate's bonds fell away, Brennan spun toward them, his face twisted with rage. Impossible. She's blind. She's remarkable, Kate said, pulling Emma protectively against her side. But then you never could see what was valuable, could you, Father? The battle that followed was swift and decisive, caught between Nate and his allies below, and Chief Mountain Wolf's warriors above Brennan's men surrendered quickly. Only Brennan himself continued to fight, backing toward the canyon wall with his pistol trained on Kate and Emma. I should have killed you 25 years ago, he snarled at Kate. Saved myself all this trouble. Maybe, Kate replied, her arm around Emma's shoulders. But then you would have missed seeing what your daughter became despite you, not because of you. Brennan's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, Emma spoke again. Mr. Brennan, she said, her young voice cutting through the tension like a blade, you should know that Kate forgives you. The words hit Brennan like a physical blow. His hand wavered, and for a moment something almost human flickered in his cold eyes. What? She forgives you for leaving, for hurting her mother, for being afraid to love. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. She told me so when she was crying. She said everyone deserves forgiveness, even people who don't ask for it. Kate stared down at Emma in amazement. The child was right in her deepest heart, beneath all the anger and hurt. Kate had forgiven the man who had abandoned her. Not because he deserved it, but because carrying hatred was too heavy a burden for the heart. Brennan's pistol slowly lowered. For the first time in decades, his carefully constructed mask of cruelty slipped, revealing the broken man beneath. She shouldn't, he whispered. I never. Love isn't about deserving, Emma said simply. It's about choosing. The profound wisdom of it, coming from an 8-year-old child, seemed to break something inside Brennan. The pistol fell from his nerveless fingers, and he sank to his knees in the red dirt of the canyon floor. Chief Mountain Wolf emerged from the shadows, his warriors flanking him. "It is finished," he said simply. 3 months later, spring had come to Eagle Valley with an explosion of wildflowers that painted the meadows in brilliant colors. Emma, her hands gentle on Kate's growing belly, listened with wonder to the tiny heartbeat within. "The baby's happy," she announced with the confidence of someone who had learned to read the world through senses most people ignored. "She knows she's wanted." Kate and Nate exchanged amused glances over Emma's head. They had been married a month ago in a ceremony that included both the local preacher and a Ute blessing from Chief Mountain Wolf. Emma had served as both flower girl and ring bearer, navigating her duties with a confidence that amazed everyone present. "How do you know it's a girl?" Kate asked, settling more comfortably against Nate's shoulder as they sat on the porch swing he'd built. "How do you know it's a girl?" Kate asked, settling more comfortably against Nate's shoulder as they sat on the porch swing he'd built. "She sings," Emma said matter-of-factly, "different from how boys sound, and she likes it when you hum the lullaby." Nate marveled not for the first time at his daughter's extraordinary perceptions. In the months since that night in Devil's Canyon, Emma's abilities had continued to develop in ways that bordered on miraculous. She could predict weather changes days in advance, sense the health of animals from across the pasture, and somehow always knew when someone needed comfort. "Speaking of singing," Kate said, "I have something for you, Emma." She reached into the basket beside the swing and withdrew a slim volume bound in leather. Emma's hands explored it carefully, her sensitive fingers finding the raised dots that covered each page. "It's a book of songs," Kate explained. "Real Braille made by a printer in Denver. Chief Mountain Wolf helped me order it." Emma's face lit up with joy. "My very own book. The first of many, I hope," Nate said, watching his daughter trace the dots with reverent fingers. "Kate's been corresponding with the School for the Blind in Boston. They have teachers who could help you learn even more about "Do I have to go away?" Emma asked, a note of worry creeping into her voice. "Never," Kate said firmly. "The teacher would come here. This is your home, Emma. Our home." As if summoned by their conversation, Tommy Rodriguez appeared around the corner of the house leading a familiar horse. Chief Mountain Wolf dismounted with the fluid grace that characterized all his movements, but today his weathered face carried news. "Friends," he said, approaching the porch, "I bring word from Denver." Nate tensed slightly. In the months since Brennan's arrest, there had been a lengthy legal process as authorities unraveled the web of corruption and violence the man had created. Dozens of families had come forward with evidence of his crimes, and the territorial government had taken a personal interest in the case. "What news?" Nate asked. "Colonel Brennan has been sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison." Chief Mountain Wolf's expression was grave but satisfied. "His assets have been seized and will be used to compensate the families he wronged." Kate closed her eyes, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "And the charges against me?" "Dismissed completely. The territorial governor himself signed the order. You are cleared of all suspicion." The relief that washed over Kate's face made Nate's chest tighten with emotion. She had carried the weight of those false accusations for so long, and now she was finally free. "There is more," Chief Mountain Wolf continued. "The governor has appointed you, Nate Blackwood, as the territorial agent for relations with the Ute people, a paid position with authority to prevent future conflicts." Nate sat up straight or surprised. "I don't understand." "Your actions in stopping Brennan, your friendship with our people, and your reputation for fairness have impressed many in Denver." The chief's smile was slight but genuine. "They believe you can help build lasting peace." Emma clapped her hands together with delight. "Papa's going to be important." "Papa's always been important," Kate said, squeezing Nate's hand. "Now others are finally recognizing it." As Chief Mountain Wolf prepared to leave, he paused and looked directly at Emma. "Young one, my people have a name for you now." Emma tilted her head curiously. "What name?" "Eyes that see all things, because you see what others cannot, the truth that lives in the heart." The formal recognition from the tribal chief seemed to settle something in Emma's spirit. She straightened with dignity beyond her years. "Thank you, Chief Mountain Wolf. I will try to be worthy of such a name." After the chief rode away, the three of them sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. The future stretched before them, rich with possibility and promise. "Kate," Nate said quietly, Do you ever regret coming here, leaving your old life behind? Kate turned to look at him, her green eyes soft with love. Never. This is where I was always meant to make. Even though it wasn't what you expected. Especially because it wasn't what I expected. Kate's hand covered Emma's where it rested on her belly. I came here looking for answers about my father, and instead I found a family. I found purpose. I found love. Emma, who had been listening with the concentrated attention she brought to everything, suddenly spoke up. Can I tell you a secret? Of course, sweetheart, Nate said. I knew Kate was special from the very first day. When she talked to me like I was a real person instead of just a blind girl. Emma's voice was thoughtful. And I knew you loved her before you did Papa. Nate chuckled, remembering his initial resistance to Kate's presence. How could you tell? Your voice changed when you said her name. It got softer, like how you talk to the baby horses. Emma grinned. Plus, you started shaving every day instead of just on Sundays. Kate laughed, the sound like music in the evening air. Very observant, Miss Emma. I observe everything, Emma said with satisfaction. It's my job. As darkness settled over the valley, they moved inside to the warm kitchen, where Kate began preparing supper, and Emma practiced reading her new book aloud. Nate stood at the window looking out at the land that had nearly cost him everything and had instead given him more than he'd ever dreamed possible. The Silverbrook Ranch thrived under their joint management. Kate's knowledge of healing, both human and animal, had made their livestock healthier and more profitable. Emma's uncanny ability to sense changes in weather and animal behavior had prevented several disasters. And Nate's new position as territorial agent brought both income and influence. But more than material success, they had built something precious here, a family forged not by blood alone, but by choice, commitment, and love. Papa, Emma called from the table, listen to this song. She began to read from her Braille songbook, her voice clear and sweet, as she translated the raised dots into melody. It was a song about travelers finding home, about hearts that had wandered finally coming to rest. As her voice filled the kitchen, Kate moved to stand beside Nate at the window. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining with the naturalness of long practice. Do you think she really can see the future? Kate asked quietly. Some of the things she says. I think Emma sees what matters most, Nate replied. The connections between people, the truth beneath the surface. Maybe that's a kind of sight the rest of us need to learn. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not the desperate, hungry sound of a predator, but the contented call of a creature secure in its territory. The baby's moving, Kate whispered, placing Nate's hand on her belly. He felt the flutter of new life beneath his palm and marveled at the miracle of it. This child would grow up knowing only love and acceptance, raised by parents who understood that strength came in many forms and that the heart could see farther than any eye. Emma finished her song and looked up from her book with that radiant smile that could light up the darkest night. That was beautiful, sweetheart, Kate said. It made me think of us, Ember replied. We were all lost, and then we found each other. She was right, Nate realized. Each of them had come to this place carrying wounds and searching for something they couldn't name. Kate had been seeking answers about her father and redemption for imagined failures. Emma had been struggling to find her place in a world that seemed designed for the sighted, and he had been trapped in grief, unable to imagine a future beyond survival. But together they had created something none of them could have achieved alone, a home where differences were celebrated, where love was the only currency that mattered, and where the future held infinite promise. Yes, Nate said, pulling both Kate and Emma into his arms. We found each other. As they stood there in their warm kitchen, surrounded by the simple abundance of their shared life, a gentle wind stirred the curtains at the window. It carried with it the scent of wildflowers and new grass, the promise of summer's bounty, and the whisper of all the tomorrows yet to come. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Not the threatening kind that brought destruction, but the gentle promise of the spring rains that would nourish the earth and help all growing things flourish. Emma lifted her face toward the sound, her unseeing eyes bright with anticipation. The baby will love the rain, she said with certainty. She'll want to dance in it, just like Mama Lily used to. Kate's eyes filled with tears at the mention of Nate's first wife, not tears of sadness, but of gratitude for the woman whose love had helped shape the man she adored and the child who had become her own. Then we'll teach her to dance, Kate said softly. In the rain, in the sunshine, in the snow. We'll teach her that every kind of weather is beautiful in its own way. And we'll teach her to see with her heart, Emma added, like you taught me. Nate looked at his family, his wife, his daughter, his unborn child, and felt a peace so profound it seemed to settle into his very bones. The mail-order bride who had stepped off the train that day had indeed been nothing like what he'd ordered. She had been everything he'd needed. Outside, the rain began to fall gentle and warm, washing the world clean and feeding the roots of all growing things. And inside their home, three hearts beat in harmony, creating a rhythm of love that would echo through all the years to come. The future stretched before them like an unwritten book, full of blank pages, waiting to be filled with new adventures, new challenges, new joys. But whatever came, they would face it together, Karen, the war-scarred rancher, the healing woman who had found her calling, and the remarkable child who saw the world through eyes of the Spirit. And in their unity, they had discovered the most beautiful truth of all, that love doesn't require perfect sight to find its way home.